How do you know you're making progress in your own yoga practice? Anybody want to weigh in? Angelique, please answer.
When I
For
can do
me,
splits. Oh, sorry.
what was that?
When I could do the splits. No.
Is that really that's one of your jokes, right?
Put behind the head. No.
No, I'm curious. It's a really important question, not just progress, but like, you know, how do you know you're actually doing anything with your yoga practice? And so I'm asking a yoga teacher right off the bat,
It's
our
been,
yoga
oh,
teachers.
sorry. Is it okay if I keep talking?
No, no, I'm going to keep talking over you.
Okay.
No, I'm actually curious. How do
Um,
you like how do you think about it?
it's been a long time since I've decided to put markers on it because before I used to put physical markers on it. And now I try not to put any markers on it because I just try to be in the journey of it. And I just let myself be in it.
Oh, that's so enlightened of you.
I have no idea is the truth, honestly. And
Yeah, I actually think it's a really important question. I'd like someone else. I mean, yeah, I get that because the easy way is to go, oh, if I'm doing this post better, or it might be, that you're showing up, to class. I mean, again, and you're being more consistent with it, or how do you can you make progress in yoga without practicing as regularly? These are all really important questions. Anyone else?
This is Kelly, and for me, it's when I'm not practicing and I notice breath awareness and awareness of body alignment. It's when I'm tuned into the variables that we are especially in touch with during practice. When I notice when I'm not practicing per
Yeah,
se.
yeah, yeah, and that's one of the things that I hope for all of you is that um that you have that perpetual, it never really stops where you realize how much you miss it,
Mhm.
right? Like that's one of the, like not just because you're not practicing, but also you're like, oh my gosh, this feels so good. Oh my goodness. Like, and then you go like, why haven't I been in this place? Right? It's that moving back in and out of the deepened awareness to, or whatever it is, whatever adjective you use, to where you live. And then you can also notice the place, wow, I've really been more stressed out than I knew. I haven't felt this place in a long time. Right? Stuff like that they're just things like that. Mark, your hands up.
Just to offer to the conversation, the idea of yoga being union and union of the body and the mind, and to have the ask of, who in our modern times has reached that, or in recent history, did Guruji reach that? Do we reach that in bits and pieces here and there? But, if that's kind of the intended place in the yogi's journey, what does that look like? I don't know. I wonder.
Yeah, I one time I'm like in some ways I'm a real practical guy. And I remember I used to go often when I was teaching at yoga journal conferences. I would go to Gary Kratzau's stuff. And if you don't know who Gary Kratzau is, he's one of the top yoga therapists. And he's especially yogic, he's a religious studies scholar, and especially yoga and healing in the yoga tradition. And I remember I asked him in one of his workshops, it's very funny. I asked him, so he's talking about some translation of a Sanskrit word, and it wasn't samadhi, but it was kind of like that. And I said, so Gary, and the guy is super knowledgeable, right? Um, I said, Gary, so what does that feel like? After all your practice, right? After all the stuff you've done, um, what does that feel like? like at this part of your journey, because that's one of the things that I think that teachers and people who are facilitating yogic experience don't do enough, is just share where they are in the process. Because the best way I can learn how to be a student is to hear somebody who's a really good student talk about where they are in their process. That's part of the things I try to share a lot as a teacher, because I think it's really helpful. And he didn't really know how to answer. He sat there and thought about it, and it was like a 3-hour workshop. And he came back later and said, well, the best thing I can think of, and he quoted a Sanskrit line because he knows it more from the, a place of rest in your own self.
Hmm.
Right. And I went, okay. And then, of course, I, being me, asked, well, what does that feel like? Right. Because I'm actually interested in the sensation. Right. So, like, there's a zillion ways that you could find a place of rest in your own self. I mean, does that mean you're trying to also, on a practical level, you're trying to find Shavasana within every pose? Are you trying to, even when you're super active, there's a zillion ways to go with what that could mean. And on some level, especially with yogic realization, and Dora, I see your hands are up, we're going to come to it, right? It, it doesn't, you don't get there by mastery and or knowledge. It is an experience at the end of the day, right? Whatever that place is, right? And by calling it a place, like, or putting a word on it like samadhi, then, like, for example, I think all these experiences exist on a continuum. So you hear this word like what, so I'm going by analogy now, and then we're going to keep going, because this is a really important discussion, by the way, right? So the word pratyahara, withdraw from the senses, is one of the 8 limbs of yoga. And you've heard me talk about this a lot. And it sounds like, kind of, at least for me, when I first started yoga, I thought it was some big, huge, strange, ethereal place, right? Like, he had to go in a cave and pray, and meditate for 25 years. And then I'd hear things like, well, you practice pratyahara in forward bends. It's like going inward. And I hear all these different things about it. But fact is, being able to withdraw from the senses happens all the time. It's just on a continuum, right? So one of the real practical ways that I'm always trying to get all of you to experience, I think, on the continuum of what Pratyahara is to do things like practice balance. So right now, like, balance your head over your neck, no matter what position you're in. Look what happens when all of a sudden, or feel the 4 corners of your feet, or when all of a sudden you're engaged at a level of awareness, or be more aware of your back body, right? Which is a really important thing, which is kind of finding a place of rest in your own self, which is blah, 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 blah. We could string all these words together. And one of the reasons and how we keep yoga and the realization of yoga away from ourselves is to think always that it's some other. It's way out there beyond what I can ever touch. Now, that's just not true. The flip side of this is also true. Just because you start to practice pratyahara by balancing your head over your neck, or even softening the inside of your mouth and trying to feel the cascading relief of grounding, for example, right? All those things require your brain to go in neutral, right? And somehow Pratyahara is learning to have a more passive brain, not just mind, in relationship to the totality of your experience. Okay, right? So, but that doesn't mean just because I soften the inside of my mouth and I can feel a change in sensation that I've mastered Pratyahara. I mean, the fact that it's on a continuum goes both ways, right? It's not inaccessible to us ever. And just because I get glimpses of it doesn't mean I've mastered it. right? So that's the wonderful double edge of the fact that it's on a continuum. I've seen a lot of students start to realize that, yeah, all of us on some level or another know a little bit better what it is to find a place of rest in your own self. Doesn't mean you've realized samadhi. And I don't know what realizing samadhi would be. But the fact is, there are a whole bunch of experiences and changes in your experience that travel on a continuum that allow you to keep deepening your realization. Sounds good to me, right? Right. All right. Angelique, back with an answer now as a yoga teacher beyond the physical, right? So what is your marker? I'm so glad you're coming back at it, Angelique, because you gave me the easy answer. And now it's like, come on, do the work. Are you muted? Are you laughing? I can't tell what you're doing. Are you praying to God for the words to come?
I knew I was mute. I always do that. I'm muted and I'm just having a whole conversation. Yeah, when Judy was talking, it was like it just like hit me and I guess I don't think about it like in the front of my head, but I think about it in the back
Right.
of my head. I
That's a big insight right there. Yep.
I I just did a class. Well, like the two classes that I've been doing more lately, like just Audrey's class and Jane's class. Jane's class this week was about mountain pose, and it was like such a beautiful class. No, Dad, thank you. It was such a beautiful class, and it was about mountain pose, and I learned so much about myself, just about about a pose that I feel like I've done so much, and um, about it from somebody who's so passionate about it, and it was that's from somebody who for somebody who always felt like I had to be moving so much and in order to really quiet down or learn anything or be like confronted with my ego or whatever that is. And I love vinyasa. For me, the stillness and the beauty of the pose is of a pose is where I've been finding my joy lately in this practice. And so that is that's kind of been a marker for me. That's been where I've been learning a lot about like that quiet place, or that's been where I've been learning a lot about like who am I even as a teacher, in
Right.
that moment.
So that's awesome. And it's exactly that's a huge see, like you and I both know after hanging out together as long as we have, like that's a big thing for you to really like get and say outwardly. And you've got it in various glimpses before. That's not like a new realization for you, but it's like it keeps evolving. And the fact that, for example, when I hear a fellow yogi say, "Oh my God, I got the greatest thing just out of Tadasana the other day," that would be, and it seemed new again, and I realized that my whole relationship to that pose has changed. Those are the words of a progressing yogi, right?
And then everything that you've said to me this whole time starts to make sense.
Yeah, right.
Make more sense, right?
Yeah. And it's not like I only have said the things to you I've said over the time because I'm sharing with you what it has begun to go on my path. It's not because I know it, right? You know what I mean? Like I kind of know it, but it's like, no, I'm just being honest about what it is, the ongoing realization of yoga that keeps happening. So in a second, we have to move a little bit, but I want to keep talking about this. This is really important. The reason why I'm thinking is I watched Renee having to start moving around and stretch out a little bit. So before we go to Catherine, let's just like move around just a little bit. Because I'm watching her like getting a little bit fidgety, going like it's not fidgety. She's here to move and like move around a little bit. So let's not forget to do a couple little things like let's not just fall into that place of discussion. because we want our discussion to include our bodies, right? All discussion should include the body. So do whatever it does to make you feel like, I can tell I have to let my legs get wide here for a second and open up a little bit and let some spasms come out of my groin and find my sitting bones differently and shift gravity a little bit. And remember to have my spine feel a little bit more sensual rather than just the place I lean on. Right? Right? You want your spine to be awake. Right? When you're thinking a lot, your spine doesn't feel as awake. Right? So we're just taking a moment here and you're doing whatever you need to bring your body into the conversation too, because we're talking about progress, especially in asana, in relationship to your yoga practice. Because I especially have had a lot of I got a whole bunch of really good feedback on my book, and I've got to do some rethinking about how to make it even more better. So my mind's been thinking really hard. All right, Catherine, your hand's up. So thanks, Renee, for the actual reminder that we should move a little bit. All right. I think you're muted.
Now am I muted?
No, you're not now. You're good.
Okay. So I just want to mention that because my mind is like popcorn. It's firing all over the place. It's so cool. But so I just, when we were moving, I just pushed on my arms of my wheelchair to get some pressure off my butt. And it was like I floated up. It was like so effortless. It was so amazing. So it reminds me, as an analogy, when my mother was teaching me how to ride a bicycle, a two-wheeler, she was running along beside me. And I said to her at one point, I said, okay, you can let go now. And she said, way behind me, she said, I let go a long time ago. So this is kind of like what my yoga practice is. I think, oh, I'm not a good yogi. I'm not and it turns out I've been doing this all along. And so my doctor, when I went and saw the doctor said, you look really good. And I said, really? I said, I didn't even have time to put my eye makeup on. He said, it doesn't have anything to do with your eye makeup. So I now have a regular practice that I do every morning before I get out of bed. I mean, before I get out of bed, is I work, there's some exercises that I do consistently. And my shoulders, which I had totally wrecked coming into this class in October, my shoulders are like fine now. Well, they're not fine, but it's a lot of an improvement. So it's just, and I feel so much more calm and clear. So that's all.
Is that all?
That's all.
That's all? That transformation is just a that's all?
Yeah, that's all. That's all, folks.
Yeah, it's amazing though. Like part of like, so one of the things that, yes, I was about to get really deep here first, not really deep, but thinking about the application of what you're saying. When I was at this Boston Trauma Conference, whatever, last week or whatever, I was there, like there's an unknowable, one of the things that the Western paradigm, and especially psychologists, psychiatrists don't fully, they kind of get, but they don't know what it feels like a place of rest in your own self, right? They might, I'm not sure what they would call that, but they, one of the things that I think, if you were to take the Western kind of take on the fact that consciousness is mind, which is too bad, That's already a mistake right out of the gate, right? That limitation, but they don't even know how much they actually think that way, which is part of why, for example, like Pat worries it's imagination as opposed to whatever. It's because she's mentalized consciousness a little bit, right? But that's okay, because that's the framework we inherit. So I'm around all these people that are super smart, and they are talking about somatic approaches, and they haven't had enough experiences that travel from body to mind. So they're still continually bringing it back to a mental conception of stuff. But one of the things that some of the other traditions, more Eastern traditions, including yoga, however you want to generalize that, is that they are comfortable with the notion that there are unknowable aspects of self, right? That there are things, they're ineffable. So to realize self is to realize a whole bunch of things you can't control, not just accept them with your ego, like, but literally that a whole bunch of what is under the hood that is you is not ever going to be directly perceivable. Right. And so there have been methodologies that are trying to help you sense that. So what I'm struck both with Catherine and Judy, and even what Angelique is saying, is that, like Catherine, the things you're saying just said right there, you look better because more of you's here, except you can't quite quantify what more of you's there. You try to think about it in terms of makeup or not makeup, and the doctor's laughing because it's not that, right? But something starts to happen. And it's really hard. It doesn't translate into an easy story about anything, although you all just gave really good stories about what it translates into, right? But that's the level that, thank goodness, don't relegate your realization just to what your mind figures out. So when you're being able to reach the towel or whatever, those are all places that you're expanding into. And you didn't figure out how to do it. It just started happening because you started to live in the only body you're ever going to have. And there's more potential there than you thought. And not everything has to be learned from mind to body. Some things can be realized from body to mind, and all of these things that we all kind of know, right? Does anyone else want to make a comment about how they know they're making progress? The three that have gone, four that have gone here have been good ones. Anything else you want to say?
I'd like to share.
Okie
Hi,
doke.
I'm Rebecca.
Yeah.
Hopefully you can hear me okay.
I can. You're moving around,
Um,
so we're being amazed. There we go. Sits
yeah,
down.
yeah. We have funky Wi-Fi in our house, so hopefully this is a good spot. Yeah, it's funny because I think if I would have answered this question years ago, my first yoga class was like almost 30 years ago. Or even somewhere along my journey with becoming a yoga teacher, I would have probably had some kind of answer, relating to the physical body and my progress physically in a pose. As I've continued along with various health issues and accumulating disabilities, my answer, how am I making progress today, is just that I showed up. You know, for me at this stage, and I'm sure somebody else can relate to this, it's like some days you just don't want to show up. For me, I know the thing that's going to help give me maybe just a little bit more peace or a little bit more contentment or a little bit of room in like a physical way, a stretch or a movement. But I can be inclined to like avoid even that, get
For
stuck
sure,
in
me
my
too.
focus on the things that I can't do, like, oh, well, I can't do that, so I'm just not going to do any of it. So yeah, I'd say today my answer is just showing up, just being willing to show up like exactly as I am and, get whatever it is that I can get from, either, a movement that's instructed in a yoga class,
Mhm.
or by something that somebody else says, something that, creates a little bit of room and space in my body or my mind, to help me have a little bit more contentment or peace in the moment.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it, and part of the question matters because all the answers that have been given so far are part of what's true of the answers, right?
Yeah,
And
and I
it's still, by the way, there still is physical progress
yeah,
in poses. I mean, it's like it's all of the things, right? It's all
yeah,
of the things.
it's
Yeah.
all of them, and I think it can change, in one's journey. I think, the answer that I might have today will be different than the answer I have tomorrow.
I think that's exactly right. All right, all right, all right. These are good answers. And then there's actually more too. One of the things is that one of the things that my yoga process has helped me with is to learn more from less, to actually not discount things that I would have normally just said, oh, that's not a big deal. Um, to gosh, that's a big deal. Right. Right. So like this idea of back body presence, for example, this grounding energy. So like the many, many, many faces of getting more grounded. So there's the more physical one. And when you combine them both into an asana, then you've got a better asana. Of course, there's feeling your sitting bones in your feet for sure. Right. And getting more centered and finding the space between your sitting bones. So when you lift your chest, you're actually putting to action Pratyahara, right? So finding the quote space between your sitting bones after realizing the structure of the physical and then realizing to soften your jaw. Obviously, we're centering right now, right? All these things are happening. You're actually practicing the unknowable receiving that happens when you allow for the space for the intangible part of self to intersect with the more tangible parts of self that you control. Right. And so when I do that, it makes me want to smile. So I actually just saw uh, Claire, I think. I can only see the end of your name, but like smile, because I think she just heard exactly what I was saying, right? And so all of a sudden you're like, wait, I get to have both what I can control and not control in a yoga pose, both what I can feel and not feel in a yoga pose. And I get to breathe. Yeah, all these things. And my breath somehow touches both the tangible and intangible, controllable and uncontrollable parts of my experience. Yeah, it's part of why breath's so magical in yoga poses. Because somehow it expands and touches more, and then it exhales kind of more into a focus. And all these things are already happening. And instead of thinking that of the three things I have to do, I actually, to quote Ram Dass, be here now. Maybe I'm going to let the outside of my mouth turn a little bit upwards. Find the analogous movement in the center of my chest. Support it with the grounding of my sitting bones. Connect it to my inner heels. Wiggle the toes that I cannot directly wiggle. Feel the echo in my lower abdomen when I try to do that. broaden the space between my shoulder blades, feel it out to the outer tips of my shoulders, balance my head over my neck, allow that I touch the sky and the earth simultaneously, let go of my day, and prepare my mind to do yoga. Good. And then release. Anyone that tells me that living in a body isn't wondrous, I don't even say they're wrong anymore. I just kind of smile and go, damn, you're missing a lot. Right? And some days I miss a lot too, so I don't actually even judge them and think, damn, that's a bummer of a diet to live on. Right? And boy, my body has not been easy for a while now. So I gotta take my legs wide again. We all got stuff, right? Right. So I'm doing this thing. So how do I know? Like sometime we're gonna, Pat, I'm gonna call you forward and ask you for the progress between doing and imagining and see what you say. And any answer you give is good. So can you, not just Pat, but like, can you, because I struggle with the same thing. In fact, I'm writing about it right now. But so from the tailbone out to the knees, right? From the tailbone out to the knees with a widened base, right? Now, what does that mean for where my heels are on the floor? How about, can I see each side of my neck in relationship to the expression of my tailbone out to my knees? So as I lift my chest, can I get the sense of that energy going out through my body as that's occurring? Right? So, and then drop my chest and watch it fall back. Right? You remember, you only need two things for a yoga pose: a center of gravity and a sense of direction. Right? So I've got this awareness here of a different kind of base that's more integrated, into which I come onto my sitting bones and lift my chest. And try to see this as an expression, realize it as an expression of energy out into the world, like a yoga pose, and then release. Because once I add my, so I'm grabbing here, right, on my, I don't know if you can see, but I'm on my, grabbing my wheelchair, footrests. So I'm getting a little extra pull here, right? Because I know once I take my arms wide, I'm gonna fall a little bit out of gravity and or have gravity work against my pose, because my low back is gonna be a little bit more compressed. And so I'll have to be more physical. So in some ways, when I coordinate all this little movement more at the hub of my wheel, right? Coming forward and extending, I'm really doing a good yoga pose. And I'm extending my energy out into my lot here, right? By making sure my spine change feeds where my limbs are. Right? So now I'm going to take my arms wide because that's what I've seen in the books. Right? I'm going to take my arms wide and go, ooh, there's a loss and a gain here. And if I work it, I can make there be less loss and translate it into a gain. Good, and then release. But I got to think about how to do that. So once my gravity, relationship to gravity changes and it's not supporting my subtle body as well, because I'm not in the center of gravity, right? Then I've got to figure out different instructions. So now I'm going to feel this energy here, this change. Now I'm going to first do a little, because I have more balance problems than most of you, right? I'm going to keep this arm down, push it against the inside of my left knee, and take that arm wide. And I'm going to get a more active spine because I'm doing one arm at a time, and then release. Then I'm going to do the same thing over here, right? This side doesn't need it as much, I can tell, right? So I'm going to actually do an extra thing right here on my armrest and do this. Because when I do it with my spine more active, I feel my legs more. Good, and then release. And then I'm going to start going back and forth. Right? And I'm making the sensations imprint my mind. Because when I go with both arms wide, I'm going to fall a little farther away from yogic realization. Because I'm not going to be using gravity the same. Right? So now I'm going back and forth. And I hope you're coordinating your breath, right? Exhale. Inhale. Right? Remember the triangle is still extending from the tailbone up to each knee. So when this arm goes wide, I'll bet you're not extending energy as well out the opposite leg. And when you do, that's cool. But then you can't forget this sitting bone either. All right, I'm going to do it again. So I'm making yoga poses here, right? I'm improving my action because I'm repeating. So my mind can keep aware of all the different places. Good, and then I'm going to come back to center. Right, I'm going to feel this again. Because now I'm going to try to feel where I've been. Now what do I do? Hit down through my sitting bones, drop my shoulder blades, broaden between the shoulder blades, go out through my arms, stretch out to the top of my head. Inhale, exhale. I'm in more space than I was the first time. Good, and then release. Bring the leg back together. So I can tell you that I feel like a twist. I feel like getting that energy right at the core to go, right? So I'm gonna go up. So I find the midline. I'm gonna go over, I'm gonna go around. I'm not gonna fall in love with this part right away. Right? I'm gonna go down and I'm gonna, instead of grind down to the earth, I'm gonna smile, go inward, practice Pratyahara, allow the earth, then hit down towards it, then rise up, which is going to make me smile, then tuck this bottom shoulder blade, broaden across the front of my collarbones, have the energy continue out the top of my head, inhale, lift up, exhale, revolve. I can tell that if I could make more dynamic energy in my pose, if I broaden from my breastbone out towards each shoulder while hitting down through my sitting bones and down to my inner heels, I can see and feel how to improve my own pose. Good, and then release. Come back to center. Are any of you getting better at seeing how to improve your pose while you're in it? That's huge progress. how to make something feel more yogic. So just so you know, right when I said huge progress, right out my window, a hummingbird came up and like was staring me down right in my face. Those got long beaks. All right. Inhale up. So I want you to take your sense of yoga and improve your own pose around, behind. Find the placement that utilizes gravity the best for your body. Because we've already gone through the fact that how you are in gravity will control how much of the self is coming into your pose. With effortless effort, by the way, Catherine, that's a big line in yoga. When effortful effort becomes effortless, you've encountered the fourth method of breathing. That's what's happening when you're lifting off your seat and you're getting light, right? So I'm going to now try to find out how to integrate and try to improve my own pose. Each side for me is very different, right? But I know I'm going to want to open the space in the center of my chest, and not as a thought, as a freaking action. Broaden between the shoulder blades. As I do that, get more back body presence, I still want to feel the lightness underneath my collarbones. I want to feel my sitting bones down to my inner heels. So on this side, I'm more stuck. So that's why you're hearing my voice get harder, is because I've got to work harder on this side, right? So don't necessarily follow the intensity of my voice. Know your own pose. Inhale, lift up. Exhale, revolve. I got more work on this side. Good, and then release. I'm more stuck on when I twist to the right. Does anyone know which way it's easier for you to twist? Do you know which way needs to? And I know that because I'm more stuck on this side, if I use too much will, I'm way more violent on this side if I try to win over here, right? So I have to like think about that when I'm twisting, right? So when I twist to the right, I have to make more space before I start to work hard. So we're going to twist each direction again and figure out what each side needs, right? Be your own facilitator. Inhale up, exhale, go. But just know that grounding, lightness, fullness, being on balance, front and back body presence, these are all the signposts you're looking for as you figure out how to come into your own pose. And now on this side, I want you to figure out how to use your breath better. It's not necessarily a deeper breath. Good, and then come on back to center. Now you're going to do it on the other side. Do what makes your yoga the best here. Remember the signposts, the grounding, the lightness, the work. All these things you're trying to figure out how to use to make the best pose for right now. Good, and then come on back to center. All right, so just let's stretch out the spine here for a second, and I'm going to ask you about the relationship between twisting and breathing. So I'm forward. You can do it on your legs too, right? But I want your spine elongating. So I want your sitting bones to go in one direction and your spine to go in the other. And you can decide where you want, I'm gonna put my hands on my table here, right? But I'm gonna make sure that I'm broadening across the collarbones and descending my shoulder blades some, but really more spreading between them. Right, and then because I have my hands down, I can tell you that the index finger needs to hit down a little bit more than the pinky side. And I want to elongate my upper arms to feed my spine. I want to lift my chest to ground my sitting bones. I want to hit down through my heels to make sure I'm catching the earth. And I want to breathe again into the whole vessel, because my breath makes sure more of the intangible part of me intersects with the part of the asana. Good, and then release. Isn't it amazing? Isn't it? Although, like, my body's getting a little cranky in general, not just this class, but like how forgiving your body actually is. It waits for you, right? Like, it kind of like, wait, I'll be here if you just engage all the way. I'll actually respond, right? I'll show you you can do more than you thought. So have you ever, like, so on a twist, we're going to twist one more time. On a twist, you don't typically, you could try doing this, but it's so wrong. I don't even want you to put this bad taste in your mouth. But if you were to try to inhale and twist at the same time without doing it, can you just see how that would just be like bad? Like if you're taking a big breath in and you're trying to twist your spine at the same time, right? Like, wait, that just doesn't, what I, you know, right? Like, because the twist is actually, the inhale is actually making space, right? You might inhale and start the twist, but when you actually go to twist your spine, well, you can do both. It's not one or the other, but like what I want you to get is that to come to the finishing part of the twists, you actually want to be exhaling as you're going to the final parts, the maximal part of that twist on that breath cycle, right? So you're kind of coming back towards the midline as you're turning the energy, right? So on this one, I'm not going to take my arm up. I want more base, so I'm going to grab here and here, right? So once I'm in a position that's already slightly twisted, my inhalation feeds the twist. But when I use the will part, I'm going to do it on exhalation. Right? As I exhale, I'm going like this in my spine. Turns out, at the bottom of the exhale, right? You're really closer to the retention. And spines are accessed a lot on retention, and then come on back to center. So like where your spine is, you can take a big inhale, and that shows you where your rib cage is, and then you can locate your spine in there. But if you're trying to go right into your spine, it's easier to access your spine as you're moving towards the retention that comes from exhale. That's why you inhale, lift up, and you exhale and revolve, right? Because as you come like that, it's dynamically helping the spine twist as the air is dissipated. So I'm going to go this way again. I'm coming forward. I'm grabbing my knee, right? So I like taking the inhale because I'm already in a twisting position here. So the expansion helps me make space, but I'm going to go for the twist, the actual more wringing out of the wash, the dishcloth on the exhale. So inhale, exhale, and make the spine more dynamic. Inhale, make space again. Exhale, and on the dissipation, let the spine become the midline and twist it. Good, and then come on back to center. Be in the center. And there's a constant exchange of expansion and action. One of the times I heard, it's a little bit talking, a little bit more woo-woo than I usually think about it. My hands are going to go on the, I'm going to do a version of dog pose while I'm saying this. So I want my spine to get more active. Um, on inhalation, you take in the world, right? You receive it. On the pause at the top of inhalation, you appreciate it. The divine, let's call it the divine. This is where I read it this way. You take in the divine, whatever that means, on inhalation. At the pause, you receive it, you appreciate it. And on the exhalation, you're washing it back out into service, right? So I'm in a version where my spine's, I'm all kind of between dog, but I'm gonna have kind of a little bit of an up dog, right? Here a little bit, I'm forward more. I'm wanting my spine to be more active, right? Here's it not being active. Here's it being more active. And then of course, the yoga pose starts to write itself when if I broaden across my chest and broaden between my shoulder blades. Of course, I want to broaden across my sacrum, and all of a sudden the whole pose writes itself before I even try, right? And then I'm going to take in the inhalation. Be grateful at the top. Exhale farther into the pose. Again, create the space. Appreciate it. Exhale it into action. Good, and then release. And then just very gently, I'm gonna go back over my chair. Whatever came out of this practice, whatever it is today, I'm gonna go back over my chair and let it come from inside out into the world. Then I'm gonna gently twist it again. Go side to side. And I'm going to practice that symmetry, that place of stillness that is necessary for Shavasana. I can still hear an advanced Iyengar yogi instructing a class I was in, and there's a place at which you just need to stop moving in Shavasana. We're not there yet. We're practicing symmetry. And then I'm going to make sure I let the relief come in by submitting myself to the support of the chair, trying to get in more receiving. So for me, I have to balance, I have to practice Pratyahara, I have to close my eyes, I have to soften my jaw, the inside of my mouth, the skin on my face, right? To fully feel the chair holding me up, I have to start allowing, making sure at the beginning of Shavasana, there's enough structure so the prana can reward, the relief can fill the vessel. Lips together, teeth slightly apart. Your mouth is like a cave. Connect your inner ears. by softening the base of your tongue. Relax your belly to relax your throat. Feel the chair. Feel your breath. Thank your body. It's quite a vessel. Thank it again. Start to bring yourself back. Slightly deeper inhalation. Slightly longer exhalation. There's a week ahead. Allow more of you to join you in the week. That means calm your mind down. All right, hands together. You can do that. If not, lift your chest. Namaste. Spirit in me bows the spirit in you. I